One is always set up. You want to make sure that your reference is right next to your paper. Tape them down so that they don't go anywhere. This is going to save a lot of headaches later on. If you take the time with your setup, you can avoid a lot of issues. Now, step 2 is going to be what we call notional space. Notional space, if you remember, is the invisible box or the invisible rectangle that every image or object resides in. It defines the top, the bottom, and the sides of the space that you're working on. So now in this image, I am not interested in drawing all of this stuff over here. That's just it cropped out of the photo, but I don't want it. So I'm going to start my notional space box here, where the edge of the lemon is, and I'm going to end it over here where the edge of the picture is. The top will be at the top here, and the bottom will be at the bottom of the line, or actually maybe even this shadow shape right here, so that I can focus just on these objects. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create your notional space box. You're going to go ahead and draw it directly on your reference photo. Doing this really makes a pretty big difference when you're working, because it allows you to make decisions quickly and easily. So hopefully you can see this. I don't know how dark that line is. Let me see if I can adjust my light down a little bit more. Okay, so my line is right here. I lined it up with the edge of the photo so that I can be confident that it's a straight line. That's the other thing, is you want to make sure that your line is straight. Now I'm coming to the bottom of this shadow shape here, this cast shadow shape, to create this end. And I'm going up to the top of the handle here, and I'm coming across again. Then I'm going to come to the side, and I'm going to catch the edge of the picture handle right here. Each time I line up my ruler, I make sure that my ruler is as straight as can be, that it's not drifting to one side or drifting to another. You want a solid box that isn't going to be trapezoidal, it's not going to be at an angle, that it's going to just be a really good box to work with. Now I'm going to draw my notional space box on my drawing paper, and I'm not going to go right up to the edge there. I want to give myself a little space. So I actually just lined up the edge of the ruler with the edge of the drawing paper right here, so that it gives me a straight line that then I can measure from, and it allows for a little bit of space there. Now here, because these are right next to each other, and I'm planning on drawing this the exact same size right here, I'm going to take a shortcut, and I'm going to line up my ruler right here with the edge of this line. And this way, if I give it enough space, it will stay straight, and then I can just come directly across with that line, and I don't have to worry about finding that. And I'm going to do the same thing with the top. So then the only line I'm really going to have to find, going to have to measure for, is going to be to find where that the final side of the box is. So now I'm going to measure the width, which is 7.5. That's convenient. Nice. I like it when it falls on an easy measurement, as opposed to like 7 3/8 or something like that. When I want a straight line and I don't have a line to measure against, I make 2 measurements every time, because this way I can take my ruler and I can lay it against those 2 measurements, and I can be sure to get a straight line. So it looks like I need to connect my box here and here. And it looks like there might be a little paint on my ruler or something. I have to be careful of that. Okay, so now I have the same size box from here to here. I know the height and the width of my objects inside. But But now I want to make sure that I get the overall shape of it, because everything else kind of comes in in a shape. Now this one's going to be pretty simple to cut the envelope down. Now if you remember that the envelope is simply sort of a bringing those lines closer, of making it a little bit snugger, going through your notional space box to find the outside edges of everything else. So for here, this is actually, it's a fairly simple composition, so it's not going to take too much trouble. But we want to find the outside edge here, and the outside edge here, so that we can refine our drawing or our initial block in even more. So I'm lining my ruler up with the outside edge of the lemon here and the edge of the pitcher here. And I'm going through my notional space box here and here. And I'm going to do the same thing. Let's see. This one's a little bit trickier, but I'm just going to make this one here, right here. So I found the edge of the bottom of the pitcher and the edge of that part of the handle. Whoops, I didn't go quite far enough. Through. Some envelopes are much more complicated than this, but generally speaking, you just want to simplify as much as possible. You just want to kind of continue to scooch in those edges and create those shapes. So I'm making, now I'm trying to decide if I want to do another one kind of coming down here. You know what, I think I'm going to just leave that one there. I don't want to, I think that would make it overly complicated. So I have 3 lines for my envelope. 1, 2, 3. The easiest way to transfer an envelope is to make measurements from the corners of your notional space box, which you can do with a ruler, or you can do with your pencil, or with a skewer, or a combination of all of the above. So I'm measuring from this edge of my box over to where my first envelope line intersects with the notional space box at the top. And I'm just going to tilt my pencil up, and I'm going to make a mark right there. Then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to quickly double check it, make sure I was accurate, and that looks good. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side of it. Now, why do I do this? This way, if I have 2 coordinates, all I have to do to make this line that I want to make here is line up the ruler on my 2 coordinates, my 2 dots, and then I make that line. I can double check my measurements if I want to, just to make sure that they're solid, looking good. This is not, not something that you want to be really, really, really worried about. Like if you're off by, well, maybe this is on this side and it should be on this side, that's nothing to worry about. But if your line is more like over here, that's going to change the proportions of your drawing. And so that is what you want to avoid as much as possible, is being off by a lot, because this will define the parameters of your drawing. So dot here, coming around on that side. It's a little trickier because in order to do it this way, especially with this particular pencil, since it's thicker, you kind of have to be like directly above it. So it might be easier just to make measurements with your ruler. That one is 2 and 1. Yep, that's right. So you can actually measure from one point to another point. Oh, that's exactly 2. Well, that's good. That was a good thing I checked, because that's off by a little bit. All right. Then once you have your 2 points, same thing. You're going to run your ruler from one point to the next. Keep that steady. Run a line down it. And then for the final one here, this one is pretty small. I'm going to eye this one and then see if I got it right. Double check. The more you do this, I know it seems burdensome, it seems like a lot of work to make all of these measurements, but the interesting thing is that the more measurements you make, the fewer you need to make later. So you're actually in the process of training your eye, getting it used to seeing all of these differences, and that really just does make a difference later on. Okay, so now I have my notional space box, I have my envelope. Now I'm going to need to see this step here, a photo of this step. I'm going to want to see the whole setup, and I need to see, before you go on any further on this, that you got the notional space box, that you have the envelope mapped out. Now, the next step, we're going to begin to sort of do kind of sight size work with it. We're going to do a couple of things. We're going to continue blocking in, and we're going to be transferring measurements from here to here. And again, really the simplest way to do this is to just use your ruler. Make sure that it's not at a diagonal. This is the absolute trickiest part. But if I want to find out where the bottom of this line is, I can measure it if I wanted to. I can measure it like this, come over here, right up above there, and make a little mark. Or I can line up my ruler, making sure that it's as straight as possible, which is difficult. Using a T-square is a little bit better. And then I'm not going to run it all the way across actually, but then I'll get over to here and I'll make a little bit of a mark. But it's that same concept to get that. So then this is where my line is going to be. So I'm going to find my main points. I'm going to find the bottom of the lemon, the bottom of the lime, the top of the lemon, the top of the line. I'm going to find this line here, this junction, the top of the pitcher, the junction of the handle here, and here as well, and probably this. And so I'm just going to go around, and I'm going to block in these larger shapes. So there's the top of the lemon. And when I'm working this far across, I'm actually going to double check all of my measurements, just because it's just a good habit to get into. And that is indeed what will train your mind, and what will train your eyes to be able to see all of these little differences. Okay, I'm happy with those. So this is going to be the top of the lemon. That's going to be the top of the lime. And now I'm going to find out where we know where the end of the lemon is, and I'm going to find out where the end of the lime is, which is going to be right here. All right, so blocked out these, and I can actually, if I wanted to, I can begin to kind of create that shape. Now I see right here where the envelope, the edge of the envelope touches the edge of the lemon there, so I want to make sure that I actually go there with that, and then it's going to kind of come in a little bit here. And I'm just going to leave it at that for the moment. I don't want to get too involved. Otherwise, I'll just start working on it, and then, well, I'll forget to explain things. Now I'm going to find this line here. This is an important element. And I'm going to go ahead, because I'm going to show you different ways of doing this. I'm going to measure this one with my ruler. So I'm lining up my first dash mark here, and I'm coming across, and it looks like it's slightly more than 4.5, very close to it. And then I will line up my edge here with slightly more than 4.5, and make my dash mark right here at the beginning. Okay, so that's going to be the edge of the pitcher, and then the lime is here, and I'm going to finish that curve right here. I'm going to have to come back to that and check it later, but that's going to be the curve of the lemon. Okay, so now you can already kind of start to see how things are building a little bit. I'm going to find the edge of the lime. And notice that I am just making kind of straight lines. I'm not trying to draw like a nice curve. I'm really just trying to bring in these shapes in just a very, very general way at this point. So now this one I'm going to run across with my straight ruler trick. So I lined up that edge right here, there. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to mark it down. Now this has a slight curve to it, but not much, so I don't want to overemphasize that curve, especially since this part right here is going to be in shadow. But it does come up here and curve, and this is actually a point. Points are fun because you can actually find that point by measuring your two directions, just like you practiced in the, so that's right, in the measurement practice sheets ever so long ago. All right, so then I'm going to move that up, and so that needs to come down. And so my curve is going to come into here. And then I can find where this is at. I really don't like measuring with that. I like drawing with the mechanical pencil, but it's very tricky to measure with, just because it has this like bump in it, and so I can't get nice and close to it. This is where you want to be using like your barbecue skewer. So this measurement here, I just measured this, moved it over, there we go. And I'm just going to try to follow that curve. Now, if I wanted to, I could, there's a point here that I could find. And then, and there's another point here that actually you could find. The other thing you could do is, is to just make a measurement of an angle. To measure an angle, essentially, you're trying to replicate the angle you see here with an angle over here. You don't want it to look like this, where you have one angle at 1 degree and then another angle at a different degree. So the easiest way to do this is by measuring angles is to just move it across without moving your positioning. So it's kind of like a move your body, not your arms. Just go straight across. Voila, that needs to come in just a little bit here. Okay. Then this is going to, I'm looking at this negative space here. Okay. And right now I'm just kind of eyeing it because it is, I will make measurements kind of as I go along. I think that needs to come in a little further. But part of training your eye is to allow yourself to kind of move back from constant measurement every now and then. It's like just step back a minute, give it a go, see if you can just eye the distance, and then double check and see if you were correct. Oops, look at that, I was off there by a lot. So this is this point here. So I measured from here, and I measured from here. So at any point in space, you can measure from the X and the Y axis and find it. That is the easiest thing to do. And then you can kind of create curves as you go along. So that's going to connect, this is going to connect to the envelope lines here, and I'm just going to eye that. This is coming up. This is this line right here. But I want to find this point here because for two reasons. Number one, it's where this side of the handle connects. Number two, it's really where the curve goes off in that direction. So I feel like that's an important point to find. So lining up as straight as I can. Make my little mark that way. Make my measurement going this direction. Oh, look at that. All right, so this is the interior. So I'm going to make a line going this way and a line going that way. This is the junction there. Now I'm just going to kind of pull up there just a little bit. All right, so at this point we have a lot of it kind of mapped out, and that's good. The trickiest area is here, where there aren't any points. It's all curves. So we're going to continue going up this direction. We'll find where it hits along here and where it hits here, and we'll find that point, and that will help us continue to map out the basic shape. Because the more information we have, the better, the easier things are. This is such an awkward angle. Let's see. But it's about right there. So that's going to come up here. Now I'm going to look at the negative space here, and I'm going to just see if I can eye it first. I just want to kind of connect it. This is just as if we were to make another envelope line, because you can make envelope lines over and over again and be changing them, going back and forth lots. And then this edge here is going to come down like this. And I'm going to make an angle measurement there. See, that's off. Coming over a little bit more. All right, so now I have kind of the basic shape of the outline of that handle. But I do want to find, let's see, let's look for this point right here. I'm going to go across with a pencil measurement right here. Okay, and then I'm going to go from the top with another pencil measurement right here. Oh, look at that. Look how far off I was. And this is why we always double check things with two measurements. We don't just assume that we have it. So this is that point right here, and we double check that measurement so we can feel pretty confident about it. All right, which also means this should be the tip of the edge of the picture right there, and I'm going to do it like that, and that's got it off a little bit. Let's double check. Whenever this happens, because this does happen, where all of a sudden you've got a couple things that are sort of getting off track in a row and you can't tell which one is the right one, that is when you start measuring with the ruler, because you need to double check it. So I think my ruler just wasn't straight there, so I'm going to come and I'm going to find this, and looks like we are at, and also like I said, kind of getting right up above, on top of it, so that you can see it a little bit easier, because we're slightly ahead of there. A bunch of things in my way. Okay, that's just really funny. So my first measurement was accurate. The other two that I was double checking, those were the ones that weren't. Okay. But that was good, because we need to see different ways of measuring, and you guys need to see the fact that I don't always nail it on the first try. I'm pretty close to it a lot now. The only reason that is because I've spent so much time, so many years, doing the measurements and training my eye so that I can see these tiny details. So I'm finding the tip of the edge of the picture here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just connect down. I'm just going to eye this, and I'm going to look back and forth, just really quickly back and forth, and just make sure that I like that slope, that it looks right. I can bring this in, going across. That's going to need to come in further. This is where you really have to rely on your eye a little bit more for these types of curves. But if you've been working at training it, you will find that it's pretty accurate. Okay, at this point you're going to erase your envelope lines. And we don't want all of the guidelines to show up. Now you're going to start mapping out the interior information, including the shadow shapes. So you'll notice right here we have a very large highlight, so I'm going to block that in. Other than that, then there's like a little bit of a halo effect here. It's a little bit lighter here, and coming out here. Okay, we've got a little bit of a reflected light here. And comes up along here. This is all going to be pretty much, if you squint, you'll notice it's a slightly lighter than here, but it's all pretty close to the same. Got a small extra highlight here, and a little bit of reflected light kind of going up that direction. I'm going to finish out the lip of the picture here. And draw in some of these details. I don't expect you to get all of the details on this handle. It's a little bit detailed, and so if you don't get them all in, or any of them in, you just have the basic shape, that is completely fine. This is the next space that I want to see a photo at. Before you start your shading, and after all of your shadow shapes are in, this is a place where I'd need to see a photo. Okay, so at this point, shading begins. Now, this is also where I want you to really slow down and pay attention to differences in not just shadows, but also textures. This is a full week project, and I want to see how well you can do this. So erase your notional space box. So you shouldn't have any guidelines left at this point. And hopefully you didn't draw them too darkly. All right, now I'm going to do some of the shading on this, just so you can kind of watch the process again of that slow buildup of layers. I'm actually just going to focus, I think, on like just the lemon, and then I will leave you to finish it. So I have my shadow shape here and up here, and so first I'm just going to very lightly fill those areas in. And you're just going back and forth. I end up using kind of almost like ellipses, really, not lines. I'm gonna see if I can bring this camera a little bit closer here to see it. Hopefully it doesn't go out of. Okay. So I'm just filling in this space. I mean, you can really honestly just think about it like coloring. Like back in the day, you know, when you were really careful about coloring and staying in the lines. If you find that you've made like a little dark spot or something like that, you just go ahead and, you know, pick that up with your eraser. I'm going to do this on both sides of the lemon, just this initial layer, and I'm not really worried about, like, if I go off, because you'll notice like I'm going outside the lines, and actually when it comes to shading, that's kind of a good thing at this level when you're going nice and light, because you want your edges to be soft and not like really harsh lines. We're not looking to have outlines. Now for these larger spaces, these are more straight lines that I'm building up, rather than those ellipses that I was doing in those smaller. I'm actually just going to continue on into the cast shadow here that you remember from drawing your sphere last week, I think it was. And this is where I'd kind of continue on over into the lime. I'm treating these all very much as part of the same unit. I don't want to have real strong differences between them. And once I get this nice layer in, then I'm going to go back and start building up the real darks. So I'm noticing, I'm just kind of squinting, and I'm noticing that the dark, there's actually 4 tones here. Looks like we've got the darkest dark is right here, a core shadow here, and then 2 transitional tones and a reflected light. And so I'm going to actually try to recreate that. That darkest dark follows a curve up, and I'm going to slowly build up that layer. Changing the direction my pencil is going, and I can actually go across into this area too, because that's going to be all a dark as well. So I don't want those harsh lines. I'm not worried about that area right now, but I don't want to forget about it entirely. Then I want to get rid of this line. I want a nice soft transition, and so I'm going to continue on into what we would call the light side, or part of the light family. Cross over that line. And I'm holding my pencil very loosely at this point, and I'm just kind of going over everything. I just want to build up a nice even tone that then I'm going to go over and over and over again to get those darks that I end up looking for. And when I'm building up those deeper darks, I'm following the contour, the curve, and going in other directions, crossing over the line so that I don't get a really sharp delineation between light and dark. keeping everything kind of as soft as I can at this point. I hope this light is making it easier for you to see, because it's actually kind of making it harder for me to see what I'm doing, weirdly enough. It's picking up the glare. I have to like lean to the side. All right, I'm going to dig into these darks a little bit. This is actually where I would normally switch to a softer pencil. But since you guys, I don't know if you have artist sets of pencils at home, I don't expect you to be working with them. So we're just going to stick to one. Alright, so do you see how I've left this part right here a little bit lighter? I've got that. I'm going to actually darken this so that you can see the difference there. And that's going to be the edge. When you're working with something like a picture, something made out of metal like this, you can go a little bit darker with your lines and a little bit sharper because it's a man-made object, so the edges can be a little bit sharper, and it still looks good. Where organic objects, oftentimes you really want to keep them softer. So then I have that reflected light there. Oops, I really need a kneaded eraser. I don't think I even have any here. Everything's at the classroom. Okay. All right. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about that little area right here. I've got my transitional tones. I've got my dark, I've got my reflective light. This area here, this is going to get pretty dark as I can make it with just my mechanical pencil here. And this whole area would go darker. But I don't want this video to go on for forever and ever, and so I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit longer, and then we'll leave the rest up to you. You'll notice how I'm not just doing like one, I'm focused on the whole area. So, I mean, I'm going between the lemon, the pitcher, the lime now, and just trying to work in this one area, not necessarily like shade the lemon, then shade the pot, shade the lime. Think about them as connecting points rather than as separate entities. Now, this part is going to be the light, so I'm going to clean that up a little bit because that's going to be nice. That's going to be a nice sharp distinction between the light and the dark. You'll always want to pay attention to the relationships between the lights and the darks, the same as you pay attention to the relationships between the lines and the shapes. So this right here is much darker compared to this, and so I want that to be shown on there. But this isn't white, right? That's that local color. It's the yellow, so I don't want to leave it totally white either. So I'm going to bring in some tone in there as well. Okay, my hand's starting to cramp up a little bit, so I'm going to stop here. Of course, and that's really, I think, all you guys need for just a refresher on shading. So you have, and then you'll just go ahead and you'll finish shading it. All right, good luck. Have fun.